All right, today we are diving into Jomo Kenyatta's incredible 1938 book, Facing Mount Kenya. This isn't just any book. It's a rare and powerful look inside a complex African society. And the amazing thing is, it's told not by some outsider looking in, but from the very heart of the community itself.
So let's start with this quote from Kenyatta himself because it just sets the stage so perfectly. Back then, it was almost always Europeans who studied and wrote about African cultures. So for Kenyatta, an African anthropologist, to study his own people, well, that was a truly revolutionary act. He was literally flipping the script, turning the rabbit, the one being hunted and studied, into the poacher, the one in control of the narrative.
And that was his whole mission, really. He wanted to show the world that the Gikuyu way of life wasn't just a random collection of strange customs. No, it was a logical, deeply interconnected system. He was reclaiming the story of his own people and showing everyone a perspective that, decades of colonial reports had completely missed. So let's dig into the two absolute pillars of Gikuyu life, because everything in their world, their families, their economy, even their religion, it was all built on this dual foundation of kinship and their sacred communal relationship with the land. Okay, so the origin story of the Gikuyu people is just fantastic. It starts not with a king or a warrior, but with a mother, Mombi, and her 9 daughters. And this isn't just some quaint piece of folklore. It is the very bedrock of their identity. The entire clan system, which defines who you are and what your obligations are, traces its lineage directly back through these 9 incredible founding women.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. Legend says that women actually used to be in charge, but the men, feeling they were being treated unfairly, staged a pretty clever revolt. But get this, their victory wasn't total. When the men tried to erase the women's legacy by changing the clan names, the women played their ultimate card. They threatened to stop having children. And it worked. It forced a compromise that made sure their ancestral names would live on forever.
So you've got this big, complex society. But how did one person actually fit into it all? Well, the answer lies in a series of really well-defined life stages, where each one is marked by its own rituals, its own kind of education, and of course, growing responsibility. A person's life was a journey, a very structured one, toward becoming a more and more essential part of the community. From a kid tending their own little garden to that all-important initiation ceremony that bonded them to an age group for life, every single step was about deeper integration. And becoming an elder, that wasn't just about getting old. It was about earning your place through proven wisdom and a lifetime of responsibility. Okay, picture this. You're at a wedding ceremony, and all of a sudden you hear the bride shouting this. You'd think it was a total disaster, right? A cause for serious alarm. But in Gikuyu culture, this apparent crisis is actually the sign that a joyful celebration is just getting started. Yeah, it's pure theater. The bride's sung protests and her pretend struggle are a cherished part of the whole wedding drama. It's this beautiful performance that honors the incredibly strong bond she has with her family, while at the same time publicly signaling that she's moving on to start a new one. For everyone who knows the custom, it's just a beautiful and really entertaining ritual. All right, next up, let's look at how the Gikuyu actually governed themselves. They had these really sophisticated systems for justice and for their spiritual beliefs, and it was all designed to maintain one critical thing: social harmony. We might think of this as an ancient, unchanging society, but that's not the case at all. This slide shows a huge turning point in their political history. They weren't always a democracy. Legend tells of a revolution, a big one, called Ichwika, where the people rose up and overthrew a tyrannical king. And what they built to replace him was just remarkable. A system where power passed peacefully, not from one person to another, but between entire generations. Their justice system was just amazing. It was built for reconciliation, not just for punishment. So any disputes started within the family, with elders acting as mediators. Only if that failed did it escalate to a public court. And the ultimate decider? It was the oath, a sacred ritual so powerful that the fear of supernatural consequences basically guaranteed that the truth would always come out. And now we get to the turning point, the Great Disruption. The arrival of Europeans was an event that Gikuyu prophecy had actually warned them about, and Kenyatta captures it perfectly in this simple but totally devastating fable. So long before the first Europeans ever showed up, a prophet named Mogo Wakibiro had a vision. He saw people coming with magical sticks which spit deadly fires.
guns, and an iron snake, the railway, that their spears couldn't possibly harm. He didn't tell his people to go to war. He advised caution and friendship because he knew that trying to fight that kind of technology would be completely useless. So to explain what happened next, when the Europeans did arrive, Kenyatta uses this powerful fable. It starts with a simple act of kindness. A man, seeing an elephant getting soaked in a rainstorm, agrees to let the poor creature just shelter its trunk inside his small hut. But of course, you can probably guess what happens next, right? The trunk is followed by the head, and then the shoulders, and then the whole body, until the elephant has completely taken over the hut, pushing the man out into the very storm he was trying to help the elephant escape. The hut, the elephant then declares, now belongs to him. And here is the absolute genius of the story, the punchline. When the man protests, a commission of inquiry is formed, and it's filled with the elephant's powerful friends from the jungle. And their verdict? The elephant was simply putting the undeveloped space to better use. This was a direct, scathing critique of the real-life colonial commissions that made the seizure of Gikuyu land legal. So this brings us right to the heart of Kenyatta's entire argument. The real tragedy of colonialism wasn't just the loss of land, as terrible as that was. It was the shattering of a culture where every single piece was connected to the whole. And this quote, this is everything. This is Kenyatta's core message. You can't understand Gikuyu religion without understanding their land system. You can't understand their family structure without understanding their age groups. It was all one single living thing. If you pull at one thread, the whole tapestry begins to unravel. And that created this devastating chain reaction, a domino effect. When Europeans came in and imposed individual land ownership, they didn't just change the economy. They shattered the family unit. That, in turn, broke the link to their ancestors. That undermined their religious beliefs, and that took away the legitimacy of their entire system of traditional law. See how it's all connected? And so, we're left with this big, important question. Kenyatta's work forces us to ask what happens when we fail to see a society as a complete, integrated whole. What unseen connections are severed, and what incredible wisdom is lost when a culture is just taken apart piece by outsiders who can't even see how it all fits together. It's a question that's just as relevant today in our totally globalized world as it was way back in 1938.